Today I'm going to show you how to make one of these cute little Among Us themed sock dolls. I make things and do things, so let's go! So what you're going to need is an old sock that you don't mind cutting up. You can try and find it in the color you want, or maybe dye the sock to fit the color you want. You'll need scissors to cut up the sock with. You'll also need needle and thread to sew it together. You'll need a marker and some form of paper to draw out a few small pattern pieces. And fabric you want to use for the eyeball. I'm using some old, scrap material, and I'll show you how to kind of go through the process of setting it up. So you're going to lay out the sock, and you're going to take the flat part of where your toes would be, and you'll cut it right about the heel, or a little bit shorter if you want your doll to be smaller. And then you're going to measure the slot for their little leggies. I will admit I cut mine a little wide, and you'll see that I used binder clips to kind of line it up and make sure my cut line was even. Now what you'll do is you'll take a bit of fluffing. Mine was a little bit of bunched up and kind of lumpy, so I started to take it and pull it apart to help soften it up, and used it to start stuffing the head a little bit, because it takes a lot of stuffing and a lot of time to stuff these guys. And once I got him all stuffed, what I did was I took one of his little legs and I started to roll the edges in on itself and sew it shut. I took a needle and sewed it all the way down to its little crotchety area so that I would have room to stuff more stuffing in.
Till I get up, time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways.
Now what I did to stuff the leg was basically I would stick the stuffing inside it and use my finger to kind of shove it up into the leg to make it, well, a standing little leggy. And once I had the leg stuffed up, I continued with the folding and stitching all the way up to the end of the other leg, and I left that section open so I could use it as an opening to finish stuffing him before I sewed him closed completely. I did have to reinforce the crotch a little bit just because I stuffed him with so much stuffing, because I wanted him to be a very firm and puffy boy.
Finding life along the way, melodies we haven't played. No, I don't want no rest. Echoing around these walls, fighting to create a song. I don't wanna miss a beat. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go.
Now we're going to move on making the patterns for the backpack and the eye section. So what you're basically going to do is take your paper and your marker. I wanted to cover up the little line from the seam on the sock, so I used that for where I was going to place my eye section. I just took a piece of paper, set it to where I wanted it, figured out how wide I wanted it to be, and marked it with a marker. And then I used that as a guideline to draw out about how wide I wanted that eyeball section to be, and then proceeded to add a seam allowance. You'll see I did the same thing with the backpack on a slightly larger scale.
We'll go through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go through the wastelands, through the highways. And on we'll go.
Then you will cut those little pattern pieces out. You'll put the backpack piece on the leftover section of the sock so that you have the piece to cut out. And then you will do the same thing with the eyeball on your little chunk of blue fabric if that is what you're using. I didn't have any pins on hand, so I just traced the outline with a Sharpie. You'll see I had a little helper, Katie, later on in this parts of the project. Then you just proceed to cut that out and repeat the same process over with the blue section for the main part of the eyeball. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take a little bit of stuffing and you're going to use a needle to sew around the edges, and it will start to form its own little pocket as you pull on the string. And as you get closer to closing it up, you will set the stuffing inside and pull it closed, and it will make a little pocket. And now that you have your little beans, you're going to proceed to sew them onto your little guy. I did this stitching by hand. It fits really well. If I had a bit closer blue, I would have much rather have used that, but the dark blue is or black actually, is what I've had, so. And you'll see I've gone ahead and sewn on the backpack. Now you're gonna take to create your little eye shine is cut out a little oval piece of fabric that will fit onto your thing. And then what I did is I just did a little embroidery stitch around the edges of it. If I had a better white fabric on hand, I would have chosen that because the edges kind of started to try and fray, especially as I was going along the top and bottom. What I decided to do next was to take that embroidery thread and sew it around the edges of the white to create that gradient look that appears in the image of the Among Us characters. I'm sorry, words are not my friend today. And more kitty helper. But once I added on the stitching, he was pretty much done. Okay, buddy, I'm gonna just put you up here while I finish this task, okay? And all done. Now we can... Buddy? Buddy? Where'd you go? Why are you near that vent? Buddy?